Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham. This is my good buddy Ty Franck. And today we're talking about what, Ty?
We're talking about being murdered while you're doing your religious duty. Which, I mean, I think that is a very common thing. I think most people who are religious wind up getting murdered.
Well, the one thing, I mean, we're talking about Heretic. And one thing that I did watching this movie, I did think about was like, this is very dangerous. I never thought about it before that. And I'm like, you know, if you're going to that many doors, just the law of mathematics, you're going to come across as crazy. You know what I'm saying?
So the reason that I was interested in this movie and wanted to do it, talk about it with you, is because as a kid, I grew up in a very evangelical, what's the word that I'm looking for? Fundamentalist version of evangelical Christianity. I mean, so some of this stuff in there was stuff that felt very familiar to me. And there is that sense sometimes, like when you're talking, because, you know, when you're in an evangelical, you're always supposed to be talking about the Lord. You're always supposed to be, like, if you're in the grocery store and you're buying something and somebody else buys the same thing as you, you're supposed to strike up a conversation with them. And if you are able to, then you turn the conversation, you find a way to turn the conversation to Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you're supposed to be doing, that all the time. And every now and then you wind
so you
up
didn't have a lot of friends in those days.
Oh, no. The only friends you have are other people in the church, right?
Okay.
When that happens, there are certainly circumstances where, and by the way, I was bad. I was not good at being religious. And the minute I could, falling out of religion and never looking back.
If loving the Lord is wrong, I don't want to be right. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I was bad at loving the Lord. There were times when you're with people and they're doing that sort of evangelical thing where it's like, you know, striking up conversations, you turn into Jesus. And me, I've always been very sensitive to other people's dysfunction. Like, I've got very good radar for crazy people. Mm-hmm. And I'd be sitting there going, we should walk away right now. This person you're talking to, they're listening to you and you think that's good. You think, hey, I'm striking a blow for the Lord. I'm going to make a convert. And I'm standing there watching this go down and go, that's a crazy motherfucker. We should get out of here. But there is this weird belief that as long as you're doing it for religion, for the Lord, that you're protected somehow, that nothing bad will wind up happening. It's kind of delusional, but a lot of people in that belief system think it's true. Mm-hmm. Like nothing bad will happen to me. Mm-hmm. So when our main characters run into the crazy dude,
set up the beginning.
The movie is about a couple of Latter-day Saint missionaries, what most people think of as Mormons. Every young Mormon wants to be a real member of the faith. The people who want to be like lifelong members, they wind up doing missions, right? So you're 19 years old for 2 years or a year and a half, depending on your gender. You go off to some other place and you try to spread Mormonism among the local population. You do faith visits with people who are members of the church, that kind of stuff. You spend 2 years being focused entirely on religious pursuits. And that's a very common thing. So the movie is a couple of young female missionaries go to a house, because one of the things that the missionaries do is, like, if you go online and you look up, like, what is Mormonism, and you put your email address, or if you can fill out things saying, I'm interested in Mormonism, or, you know, like when there used to be ads, like if you want a free copy of the LDS Bible, if you want a free copy of it, you could call a number or fill out a thing and you get a free copy. If you do that, some missionaries are going to show up at your door. So the two girls who show up are clearly following up on one of those kind of things. Either asked for a Mormon Bible, or he filled something out online, or whatever. He expressed interest. And when you do that, the missionaries show up. And so the setup of the movie is these two young girls go to this guy's house, and it's very clear. It becomes very clear as the conversation goes on that he's got an ulterior motive, but they either don't see it or are talking themselves out of their suspicions, and they keep getting drawn further and further into his web, which leads to all kinds of craziness. And we as the audience, I think, quickly recognize there's something weird going on here very quickly. Mm-hmm. But we also see how it happens so slowly. It's the boiling frog, right? So slowly pulls them in that you understand why they're not just going, let's GTFO and running out the front door.
Right.
It's very well done, very well set up.
Yeah, I really like these directors, Scott Beck and Brian Woods, and I think they wrote A Quiet Place, which I really liked, I really enjoyed. But I really like this movie, and it felt Hitchcockian in the sense that the horror comes from ideas. It comes from the suspense of what's happening next, and also the writing and the portrayal of it could mean two things, right? So Hugh Grant walks that line where it's like he's so charming, but then he makes missteps. But it's like, is that misstep on purpose or what? So it's always that line. And I think that the two protagonists in this, I think they passed the test that when you talk about your protagonists, is like they're smart.
They are.
And they actually make good choices. And they say, we can't come in there. Like, he's like, come in, and we can't come in unless there's a woman here or whatever. And he's doing all his tricks. But even those tricks aren't really working. Their weakness is the need to be polite.
Yes.
And that I find is great. I love that in horror movies.
Yes.
When your weakness is being polite.
The thing I like about it is not only are they missionaries, but they're female missionaries. And both of those groups, both missionaries and women in our culture, are groomed to place a very high value on politeness. That the most important thing you can do is not offend people, not hurt anybody's feelings. And predators weaponize politeness. That's one of the things that they do. Hey, I've got a bunch of those jars. That's from that juice place over by your house, right?
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of those because they brought up, we got all those juices and she brought all those jars home. She loves those jars. But anyway, so what Hugh Grant is doing in this and what the girls keep falling for is he's weaponizing their politeness against them, which is a very common thing with both women and missionaries.
Things that works. He's really having an interesting third act with subverting that romantic comedy guy of the 90s because he's incredibly charming. He's also charming in a harm. I don't want to say harm. Like he's very warm and not dangerous. Does that makes sense? He's not physically imposing. He's got a really sweet smile. He has that dainty British accent.
Right.
But also the character of Hugh Grant and all those iconic 90s love story movies really work in the favor of the movie. Because you see Hugh Grant and you think Notting Hill, and you think of like one of the sweetest, love stories they made. So the baggage of his 90s actors he uses against us as an audience watching this. And he's in, but Hugh Grant is obviously highly and really intelligent. He's a very smart actor and he makes very smart choices. And he uses that whole persona and that charm in a really smart way. But he also drops hints, even at the very beginning, that there's something else going on. So the tension between, this guy is so charming and so harmless. His wife's in the other room. They're making blueberry pie. He's got this great little sense of humor. He's wearing a sweater, like everything. But then he makes little comments about pie and the way that he talks and how he observes things about them. That's like, oh, that's a little, why are you observing that? And he brings him in. And I really like trap horror movies like this, where it's one choice. It's like touching the web. And the more they wiggle, the deeper they get in, and there's no going back. And then and at the end, you realize it all started with one choice. It's just go walk. As soon as that door closes, minute they walk in that door,
they're doomed.
And then you're like, fucked, they're doomed.
Yeah, and I think you're right about what the casting being so brilliant with Hugh Grant, because if you let's say you cast this same exact movie, same exact actors, except instead of Hugh Grant, you used Hugo Weaving. Great actor, got an accent, all of that stuff. The minute Hugo Weaving opens the door, everyone in the audience will go, don't go in there. He's up to something. That guy's up to no good, because he's just got that face, right? Where it's just
right.
Like everything he says, you're going to suspect. But Hugh Grant doesn't have that history of playing scary bad guys. He has the history of playing super nice guys.
Like if Christopher Walken opens the door, you're like, get the fuck out. Going in that fucking house. Or the dad in People Under the Stairs. That guy. Right. Yeah, like it's not happening. You're not going in that house.
No, you're not going in, right?
Yeah.
And so in that way, the casting, I think, casting Hugh Grant in this movie is a huge percentage of why the movie works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because of, like, as you said, we're bringing the history of all his other movies to this movie, and it's all working in favor of the movie that we think of Hugh Grant as the romantic lead, you know.
And when Hugh Grant's played bad guys in a couple of other movies, and he's highly effective because of this reason, but also there is a danger underneath. There is a reveal. It's always a reveal when you realize like he is not a good person underneath that charming persona. It's always like, oh, you got me with that smile. You got me with that thing again. And I think too, like based on the nature of this, the horror and the way that the reveals come, like the blueberry pie, you know, how the camera zooms in on the candle and it's the blueberry candle. So, and I think, you know, the directors, they talked a lot about being inspired by David Mamet's Oleander, or being inspired by these big dynamic pieces that are taking place on one or very few sets, and how you can use the camera to amplify the tension and the drama within the scenes. And that felt like Hitchcock to me as well in that situation.
Yeah, so you know, it's staying with our breakdown of the movie. So the two girls, they show up, they're talking to the Hugh Grant character. He invites them in. They tell him they are not going to go in, and he reassures them by saying his wife is in the kitchen. She's baking a blueberry pie, or she would have come out and talked to them. They, you know, and the other thing is it's cold outside. It's wet. So he's like, you know, get in here so you're not cold. Gets them inside, closes the door. We know, you know, looking back, that's the moment you're fucked, right? The moment you got talked into. But everything is so reassuring. My wife's right in the next room. She wants to talk to you girls. She's just finishing making a pie. Do you want some pie? You know, like, it's all of that, right? It's very reassuring. But as you're saying, Wes, the thing that he's doing is being incredibly reassuring, but every now and then just making one little off comment. Not enough to be offensive, not enough to get them to go run screaming from the house, just enough to make them kind of cock their heads. And here's part of the brilliance of the casting and the performances is you've got these two girls playing the two missionaries, and the one so Sophie Thatcher plays Sister Barnes, and you very quickly get the sense that Sister Barnes is the more skeptical, the more sort of she seems like she's noticing everything. She's not falling for his charms in the same way that the other missionary is. She just seems like she's a little standoffish. You get the sense that she wasn't born into this religion, that she's a later in life convert. And so she's still got a little bit of that streetwise.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting, because I got the sense that she was born in this religion, that both of them, but she's been through some shit. She's been through some real life shit that they allude to in there, and going through that has really made her question in the past her faith, and because when he starts going through the questions, she replies in a way that she's been through that.
Now watching it, I got the sense that she was a convert, and part of that is that, so if you're born into a faith and all you've ever done is hear from your parents that faith is true, and everybody around you in your social circle, because you only hang out with people from the church, they all say that faith is true, and you never think about it. It's just true. It's like, obviously that's true, because everybody I know and everybody I care about tells me it's true all the time. If you come in as a convert, especially if you come in later in life, maybe not as an adult, but as like a teenager or whatever, you have to get past all of the skepticism. You have to get past all of the arguments against. You have to find a way to make it make sense to you. And in some ways, you wind up with a deeper appreciation of the faith, a more nuanced appreciation of the faith. And part of the reason I think she has that is because later in the movie, and we'll get to that, when he's laying out all the criticisms of the faith, she comes back at him with like, yes, but you're not considering this, you're not considering that. And the other girl, the one who seems like she's been in the faith, she has no rebuttal. She's just standing there staring at him. So anyway, so the thing that's happening here is you get this sort of split between the two missionaries. You get Sister Barnes, who is much more skeptical. She's the one who's like looking around like, I don't know, this feels hinky to me. And then what's the other one? Sister Paxton, played by Chloe East, who is much more sort of like what I think of as the prototype Mormon. She's blonde and she's cute and she's very like, oh, and everything's okay and everybody's going to be nice to each other, right? You sort of get that emotional philosophical divide between the two of them, which I think is very interesting. That he then, when he's saying this weird stuff, Sister Paxton is hand waving it off, but Sister Barnes is like, that was a weird thing that he said. Why did he say that? And so she becomes, I think, if they were both just, if everybody was Sister Paxton, the movie would not work as well because we wouldn't have anybody we're sympathetic to. But because Sister Barnes is there being very skeptical, and we as an audience are starting to get skeptical, we have a character to attach to, which I think is very effective later in the movie because we quickly attach to Sister Barnes. We want her to win because she's skeptical. She's trying to get out of there. She's figuring stuff out. And that gives us a stand-in as an audience.
It's interesting because, I think that growing up, like no beliefs were ever thrust upon me. And I was always curious because like I'd never even had a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness come to my house. I just remember watching movies and they'd be like, Jehovah's Witness, I'm like, what is that or whatever. I wasn't raised in a specific church. I grew up in the Christian South. So you would hear culturally people say things like, I'll pray for you or whatever.
You never had a Baptist knock on your door? Because
I've never had a
Baptist will knock on your door too.
Never had it must have been the neighborhoods I was in. They were like, fuck those people. They're lost anyway. But yeah, I've never had a Baptist knock on my, I've never had, and you know what? I've always wanted it because I was always interested in it. And so what I have found later in life when I'm like, what is this, what everybody's talking about? So then like just deep diving in religion, I don't have any emotional history with that religion. So when I come just out of curiosity, and what I have noticed is when I am talking to, and so it's interesting, like this movie and the topics they talk about are fascinating to me. And the impact that religions have had on the world is interesting to me. And philosophy is interesting to me. And I think that, coming into this, really kind of going back and trying to understand like 99.9% of the world's civilizations that have ever existed have had some version of reaching above themselves, reaching higher than themselves. Even the idea of the resurrection and the virgin birth, like that was kind of expressed in mythology and religions before Christ.
And over again. Yeah.
Over and over again. And so then that shows me that there's power in those stories. Why is that in our psyche? Why is that in our DNA? Why are we having this need to reach above ourselves? And I think certainty, when people are locked into certainty, that's when, certainty about things that are impossible to be certain about.
Yeah.
Right. And that's when you start to get hardened against certain ways of thinking or believing.
Yeah. And when a belief system becomes foundational to your sense of self, you will defend that belief system to your death. Because people would rather die than say, this thing that I think is very important to who I am as a person is wrong. And you see it all over the place. You see it in politics. You see it in religious beliefs. You see it in all sorts of beliefs. It's not just religion. But I think that's what makes this story interesting to me is that he's saying, the Hugh Grant character is saying, I have found the true religion. I have found the only true religion.
Yeah.
And we can have a conversation, and at the end of that conversation, I will tell you what the only true religion is, and I'll prove it to
you.
Yeah. Now, that's not something that's going to work on. So as a person who was a member of an evangelical church, when the members of the church hear something like that, what they're hearing is, oh, he'll give me something I can argue against to turn him to my thing. Because everything anyone else says, when you're preaching, everything anyone else says, you're not really listening to it. You're not really engaging with it philosophically. You are looking for keywords that are keywords you know how to argue against and preparing your argument in your head. So when he says, I'll show you what the true religion is, what they're hearing is, oh, he's going to tell us what his beliefs are, and that will give us something to argue against, and then we can try to turn him to our side.
See what you're saying, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they're not threatened by that in a way that they probably should be.
Yeah.
They're not hearing what he's actually saying. They're running it through their programming.
Yeah. The directors said that they wanted to give like the ultimate session of mansplaining. Yes, he wanted that Hugh Grant's character is the ultimate mansplainer. And
as I said, the fact that they make the missionaries, because there are boy missionaries, there are boy Mormon missionaries.
Yeah,
the fact that they made it a couple of women, I think, really leans into that. That he's mansplaining, but also that he's, as I said at the beginning, he's weaponizing their politeness against them. Culturally, we so indoctrinate young women in that it's their job to be the nice one. It's their job to be polite. It's their job to make sure everybody else is comfortable. And predators absolutely weaponize that training against young women. Like boys, we don't get that. Like at a certain point, like, you know, I mean, as me at 19, I would have been like, you better open this door. I'm going to start beating some ass. Yeah. Right.
I would have been like, Hugh Grant, I'm going to open that door with your fucking head.
Right. Exactly.
Like 5 minutes. And then I'm going to go in there and I'm going to eat your blueberry pie and shit on your face.
and that is the difference in how boys and girls are sort of indoctrinated when we're young. Right. And I think the part of the reason the movie works is because he does use young women rather than young men as the people being manipulated by Hugh. Right. And Hugh, obviously, the Hugh Grant character obviously knows how to weaponize their politeness against them, and very cleverly and expertly does that.
And he slowly kind of sits down and starts to dismantle their beliefs and starts to go into certain things. But what I thought was really smart about this movie, and reading about the directors and reading about those two girls, the directors come from like a Christian background. These two girls were ex-Mormons. There's no message in the movie. It doesn't take a side. It's not. And what I think is really smart about that is that it's giving all sides to an argument, but certainty is the enemy, because Hugh Grant is certain that he found the ultimate religion, which is control. And so, it's weird is because it mimics Satan's ultimate sin, which is pride. And his pride is that he solved the religion riddle, and now he's going to make himself God within this religion of control.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a fundamental, to probably misuse the word, epistemological problem that Hugh Grant is saying it builds up to this moment where he reveals to the girls, he thinks the ultimate religion is control. And at that point, I am the least religious person on the planet, and I will and as a person who was raised in religion, I know my religion, I know my Bible, and know my Jesus. I will argue with anybody. I'll go toe to toe with anybody. I can quote scripture just as well as they can. And I agree when he says religion is control, I agree that the effect of religion is control, but I disagree that religion itself is control. I think that's like saying the ultimate hammer is a driven nail. That it's not. That yes, hammers are used to drive nails, but hammers are not made out of driven nails. So I think religion is often used to control, but that doesn't mean religion is control. Religion is much broader than it. It is a lot of things. People weaponize religion to exert control. And so when he says religion is control, I'm like, no, you've made a category error.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly right. What he's saying is that religion is control. No, religion is what people have used for control, but that doesn't mean the religion itself is control.
Yeah, and it's a category error. You know, you're taking an effect and deciding the effect is the thing, and that is not right. And you said the movie doesn't make a point. It doesn't make a decision. It doesn't tell you what you're supposed to think. And that is absolutely correct, because I'm very much on the side of the Hugh Grant character when it comes to the value of religion.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get to that point, and I'm like, oh no, Hugh, you lost the plot there. That's not. And by the way, I have met atheists who, and I consider myself, I don't consider myself an atheist. I consider myself a materialist and a naturalist. One of the natural outworkings of being a materialist and naturalist is there are no gods. But I met people who are like atheists, like hardcore atheists, like Like if you express belief in a God, they have to attack you for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And often what I find is their arguments wind up including some of these category errors, where it's like, I'm with you when you say you don't think there are any gods. I'm with you on that one. But then you start asserting things about reality based on that. Like, no, those things don't go together. Stop jamming those two categories together. I think it is entirely possible to be completely evil because of your political beliefs, just the same as it's possible to be completely evil because of your religious beliefs.
And when atheism becomes just as zealous as any religion, that's where it starts to rub me the wrong way. And I really enjoy talking about religions and things like that with you because number one, you were raised in it, so you know a lot about it. But number two, you're not emotional about it. You're not attached. Your identity is not wrapped up in any one way. Yeah. And so you're like, this is what I believe. This is who I am, but you're not going to offend. I'm not going to try, like you're not going to offend me or get emotional if you,
and I'm able to be friends with very religious people. Yeah. It doesn't bother me that they're very religious. If they need that in their lives, why would I try to talk them out of it? Why would I try to damage them?
Right.
My point just is that anytime you take religion and make it just one thing, especially broad reaching religions like Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism or things where they have enormous history and enormous reach and lots of mixing of ideas, and you try to make them only one thing, you have made a mistake. And so for me, as a person who's not religious, watching this, a lot of the early arguments Hugh Grant makes in this movie, I'm sympathetic to. I'm like, yeah, I think that is also true. And then he does the thing where he makes a huge category error and he decides that religion is this one thing. To me, that is the moment where he crosses over into now he's a fundamentalist. Now he's as bad as they are because he's as bad as fundamental Christianity is because he's making these category errors and deciding all religion is this one thing. And so because of that, I agree with you that the movie doesn't set him up as being right and them being wrong. Which I appreciated about the movie. And then when you see what he's doing to prove his point, you're like, no, that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah,
he's as bad as any religion.
Have you ever seen, besides have you ever seen like a contemporary Christian movie? Like, have you ever seen a movie that's like Christian within its very nature? Like it's on the, that's what the movie's for, like a contemporary.
Yeah, I mean, I don't sit and watch them. But
no, have you ever seen? I said, have you ever seen one?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, I've seen it.
So then you see this, and you're like, "This is what do you think you're doing?"
Right?
Because first of all, where did preachy come from? It's like the reality is like if you're anytime if you're going to make a movie and that movie doesn't resemble real life. With all the ideas of life, and then you very narrowly focus on a contemporary subculture of Christianity way of doing things, and if they just say this, if they just pray, then the husband's going to come back and isn't a happy ending, and we all come together, and God was in this the whole time. So God specifically was rooting for this one specific thing, for you to get the promotion, or for you to get the thing, or win the football game, or whatever. And it's like the complexity of the Bible, of spirituality. If you boil it all down, if you dumb it all down to one specific thing that is really so, you're not gonna. The movie is not effective. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
it's like, and it's not as interesting as a movie like this, where you present articulate, smart ideas and arguments from all different sides. You create a fun horror trapped in a house situation, and then as you watch this and you are really struggling with these ideas and really kind of trying to figure things out, that is a more effective way to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, the movie isn't evangelizing, which is funny in a movie where all the characters are evangelizing. The two girls are evangelizing for their Mormon church. Hugh Grant, turns out, is evangelizing for his belief system, right? Trying to convince them that he's right. The movie itself is not evangelizing. It's not saying either of them are right. It's not hitting you over the head and going, you see how stupid the girls are and how smart he is?
Anyway, so explain to me the ending.
Okay. So let's quickly go through. So The girls come in, they're doing their thing. They start to realize something is wrong. They start to realize, then he leaves. The Hugh Grant character leaves for a while. They try to get out. They try to open the door. The door won't open. He's explaining it away in a way that doesn't make any sense, where he talks about security systems and timers, and they're like, something is clearly wrong here. Finally, the girls are like, something is clearly wrong here. Sister Barnes very quickly is like, we got to get the fuck out of here, and they're trying to figure out how to get out. And then, like, we have this moment where they wind up down in sort of the basement of the house, and he shows them 2 doors, and he says, one of those doors leads to freedom, one of those doors leads to imprisonment, and you have to pick. Which is such a ham-fisted metaphor for religion, right? Like, and by the way, Sister Barnes calls him out on that. She's like, I see what you're doing here, and like, you're using the most blunt metaphors for religion, which I really appreciated that she did that. But now they wind up taking one of the doors. They wind up down in this horrible basement, and they realize that both those doors would have led to this same place. That no matter which religion you pick, this is where you end up, is sort of his metaphor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then there's this crazy moment where this woman comes out. She eats some pie. She dies. And he's like, I have this religion. I'm going to resurrect this woman. I'm going to bring her back to life with the power of my beliefs. A lot of crazy shit happens. Another woman shows up. Sister Barnes is, I think, the one. I remember. I think it was Sister Barnes who's like,
Barnes,
they're not the same woman. These are 2 different women.
Right.
He didn't resurrect her. He just did a bait and switch. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the course of it, Sister Barnes gets stabbed. The other one, she's forced to fight back. She sort of battles with the Hugh Grant character, and the interpretation of and what winds up happening is Sister Barnes somehow is still alive. She stabs Hugh Grant. He's dying. He's crying in Sister Paxton's lap as he dies. And then she gets out of the house and she goes outside, and it's all bright and beautiful outside.
Well, you forgot about the cages and the girls in the cages.
And at one point they go past where it turns out they were right. These were multiple women who had been caged. They get the idea that Hugh Grant was looking for another woman to put in one of these cages, which one of the 2 women he would have put in a cage. And his position is that all religion is control. And by exerting his control over these women and using these women to make his point for him, he's exercising the only true religion that there is, which we've already talked about. My problem with that argument. The interpretation of the end that I find most compelling, and this was not my interpretation. I actually talked to multiple people about this, and somebody else is the one who brought this up, and I thought it was very clever, is that both the girls die. That Sister Barnes is stabbed, she dies. Sister Paxton is being choked and beaten by the Hugh Grant character, and she dies. And what happens at everything after that is her brain running the last script. That somehow, miraculously, Sister Barnes is still alive and saves her life, and Hugh Grant cries in her lap because he realizes he was wrong. So it turns out she was right, and then she finds the door and she goes outside and she walks into like this heaven-like setting of like bright sunlight and beautiful garden, and it's like she's walked into heaven.
And the butterfly shows up and harkens back to the story they told about the butterfly, the man dreaming of the butterfly.
Yes.
When he woke up, he didn't know if he was the butterfly that was
correct.
dreaming he was a man, or it was the man dreaming that he's a butterfly.
And the interpretation that I find really compelling is that they both died. Paxton died. Hugh Grant killed her. But then she got this beautiful dream at the end as she's dying. This beautiful dream where she was right, Hugh Grant was wrong, her friend survived long enough to save her. She finds her way out. She goes into this heaven-like thing. A butterfly lands in her hand, and it's very sort of like beautiful at the end. That's the interpretation I like. But I think the movie does a nice job of leaving it open to many interpretations of what happens at the end there. And like religion itself, there's so much left open to interpretation, which I think is the right way to end.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it's interesting about movies like this. Would you So I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was smart. I thought it was fun. I like these directors.
Yeah.
And I want more horror like this.
Yeah.
I want to lean into this where it's smart and that the fear comes from the ideas.
Yes.
And I do think, like, do you think that the movie, like, I do think that the woman coming in and eating the pie and dying and then her coming up, I understand the point of it and I think it makes sense, but I do think it was like we kind of need a little supernatural scary element just to kind of really, add to the horror within this situation.
Well, I'm glad that they didn't go that way. I'm glad that there wasn't any supernatural.
Me too. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like that, to agree with an earlier point you made, and what I would like to see in more horror movies is the movie. When you start out, you think Sister Paxton is a knucklehead. You think she's so happy, and she's like, oh, I'm so excited to share my religion with you, and I'm just kind of a dummy. And Sister Barnes is the smart one. But as the movie goes on, we start to realize Sister Paxton is playing a role, and she's very good at playing that role, but she is not dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And when the chips are down, she keeps making smart decisions. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't fall for his tricks. Mm-hmm. So we realize, we were wrong about her in the same way that he was wrong about her.
And resourceful.
Yes. And I liked that because the movie doesn't rely on it. The only dumb decision that was ever made in the entire movie is walking in that door. But we understand why they made that decision. We understand why they did what they did. And so we're not mad at them. We're not like, oh, they're a couple idiots now, they're going to get killed. I want more movies where, like you said, where I feel like everybody is being smart and the horror arises from the situation rather than from, the person who's being chased by the dude with the chainsaw and he runs upstairs and locks himself in a closet. And you're like, well, of course you're going to get murdered by the chainsaw. You locked yourself in a fucking closet. You got nowhere to go. And the guy's got a chainsaw. I don't like that anymore. I'm tired of that. I've seen too much of that. I like watching where, my favorite horror movie of all time is Alien. And the thing that I love about Alien is everybody's smart. Yeah. They keep trying to figure out what's going on. They keep making smart decisions. And when they do get killed, it's because there was information they didn't have that they couldn't have had. So it's not like they made a terrible decision. It's that they were ignorant of something that was going to come back to hurt them. And there was no way they could have known that.
We have to remember that with Friendship Basement.
Yes. No Friendship Basement is going to be all about the smartest person in the world getting pulled down into the Friendship Basement.
So wait, am I very smart when I die in the opening?
You die immediately.
I'm just dumb.
You're just dumb. You're the guy that gets killed immediately.
You get killed. So what he just said is going to be our comment on that.
Yes.
Being like, you're going to die in the very beginning, and then and it mean nothing or be connected to the other movie, but it's from a bad choice that you made.
It's just from a terrible choice. And then for the rest of the movie, we had smart people making smart choices.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we clarified that.
Let's get to the top 5.
Oh, the religious horror. Yeah. And no, I like this list. I think this is great.
I do too. This is great.
I mean, for me, the number one best is The Exorcist. I mean, 100%. There's no question in my mind. And it is a very Catholic movie. But it doesn't matter that I'm not Catholic. I think it's a fantastic movie. And have you seen Saint Maud, Wes?
No.
I love Saint Maud. I think Saint Maud is fantastic. It's a great
I've never
movie.
even heard of it.
Yeah. And did you ever wind up watching House of the Devil, Wes? I kept telling you to watch it.
Tell me what happens in it.
It's the babysitter goes to babysit for an older couple that's leaving, and it turns out that it's like they're a cult and they're going to use her to be impregnated with the devil's baby. It's Rosemary's very 70s. Baby? It's a T West movie. It's very 70s style of filming, but it was made just 10 years ago.
What's it called?
House of the Devil. I love that movie. I mean, obviously, Rosemary's Baby, one of the great horror movies of all time. Very hard to argue against that one. Okay, you know, I'm always going to vote. I love Jugface. I think Jugface.
Yeah, you are a big Jugface fan. I watched that with you. But real quick, like if we talk about these two movies and don't talk about any other movies, then we've done our job. We got to talk a little bit about The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby. And I think that out of those two, I have never when we talk about horror movies, I think if you had to say like, what is the single most terrifying experience I've ever had watching a movie, it would be The Exorcist. Nothing affected me like that movie affected me. And Rosemary's Baby is one of my favorite movies, my favorite horror movies just in all. And
you just like all them naked old people.
I love it. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, you
talk about hard on.
You got that granny fetish.
I didn't even know I had that fetish until I saw the lady in the bathtub in The Shining.
Right. Oh yeah, she was hot.
Oh, the Frailty, dude. That's a
Frailty
that's
is
a
so
pet
good.
favorite.
Yeah,
I love
is
Frailty.
So good.
Yeah, The Omen. I've always people have their thought. I've always liked The Omen. I always like that's great.
I like Omen, but I don't know if I like it more than some of these other movies. I love The Witch. I think The Witch is fantastic.
But The Omen was the first like cat. Well, no. Was The Omen before The Exorcist?
I don't think so.
Because there was a movement, and I think that might have been started by The Exorcist. It might have been started by
the Catholic horror thing.
No. It was let's cast well-known dramatic actors and treat to really make a deep drama with these great dramatic actors.
Yeah.
Like Robert Mitchum in The Omen. So Robert Mitchum, when they did that, he has such people trust him as an actor when they watch them. It's easier to get into the spell of the horror when you have a Robert Mitchum.
Because it doesn't feel like a horror movie. It feels like a real movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the horror elements start to creep in, and it's much more shocking that way. Yeah.
And so like now we're used to that kind of situation, but then it was something new. It was a new movement because they were telling these like if you watch The Exorcist, it's a very serious movie with very serious actors, and it brings you in a way where horror was kind of an event or a thing before that.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate the Conjuring movies. I hate I have nothing but contempt for the people that those movies are supposedly based on. They were just con men. They were horrible, evil con men.
Hey,
and the fact that we keep idolizing them with those movies just pisses me off.
Have you ever seen Ty to be lukewarm about something? He either fucking hates everything with a fiery passion or he loves it. There's no like in between.
I don't think that's true.
I've never heard a meh out of you.
There's a meh movie for me right here, Constantine. I'll watch Constantine if it's on. It's not a great movie. I do love Tilda Swinton in it. I think Tilda Swinton's fantastic in it.
I'm definitely meh on Constantine, and I'm meh on End of Days.
Yeah, Can I tell you my pick for the worst movie on this list that I love?
Wicker Man?
The Prophecy. I love The Prophecy. It's a bad movie. It's a terrible movie. I fucking love that movie.
With Christopher Walken when they're angels?
Christopher Walken as an angel. Yep.
Yeah. There is something really compelling. It has a cool atmosphere.
It has a great atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I love Christopher Walken as that evil angel when he's like, I'll kill babies in their beds. I'll burn entire cities down. I'll kill babies in their beds. And the one thing you can count on is you'll never understand. You'll never understand why. When she's like, why are you doing this? And he's like, goes full evil. You'll never understand why. Yeah, I just love him in that movie.
Dude, do you remember The Wicker Man? Did you watch The Wicker Man?
Well, I've seen both Wicker Men, and one is great and one is terrible.
Wait, I've only seen the one, the old one, the one where
you've never seen the Bees?
You've never seen the Nicolas Cage version?
No.
Wow. Neil, you call yourself a Cage fan?
Wow. Neil LaBute. Yeah.
The playwright, Neil LaBute?
Yes.
What did he directed it?
Yep.
I liked Misnomer. Go up.
Midsummer?
Yeah.
I did too. I think Midsummer is good.
Yeah.
I would not put Midsummer above The Witch, though. I think The Witch is a better movie than Midsummer.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I loved The Witch.
The Witch is fantastic.
Hey, everybody, don't like this podcast. Don't subscribe.
Yeah. Do not like this podcast. Do not subscribe. Definitely don't leave a comment. We definitely won't read those comments. We definitely won't talk about them.
I bet that'll work, right? Let's try it. Look, please don't like this podcast. Don't subscribe. Don't leave comments. Don't leave nice reviews. Don't do any of that. Don't even watch this.
Do not join our Patreon, because the Patreon, that money goes to Joseph. Fuck that dude. We don't want him to get money. We don't want him to continue eating shoes.
And our Patreons are like, they are the least pleased Patreons of any Patreons in podcast history. Every day they wake up and be like, why am I a part of these dipshits hangout team?
If you want to hate your life and hate all the choices you've made in it, definitely join our Patreon.
Great. That was wonderful.
That's it.
A wonderful podcast.
Say goodbye, Wes.
And now he's feeding you lines. He's giving you
Where
a
were
read.
you when I needed you in the beginning, Joseph?
How much do actors hate when somebody gives them a read?
Yeah, and then you gave me a line reading?
Yeah, wow.
Jesus.
Wow.
Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.